This is a US missile heading straight towards Iran. Iran only has a split second to defend.
موشک آمریکایی شناسایی شد. آماده رهگیری شوید.
But in a few seconds, this will become the worst mistake Iran has ever made. Because it is not a US missile. It's actually a plane full of families. For the next 3 days, Iran will tell the world that this never happened.
Iran is denying claims that one of its missiles brought down the Ukrainian plane that crashed near Tehran this week.
بوقستانه هنوز برای ما نمیتونه مشخص بشه ولی همچنین اشاره کردیم قطعاً موشکی به اون برخورد نشده.
We animated the entire thing to show you how this happened. It all started because of this man, Qasem Soleimani, Iran's most powerful military commander. For nearly 2 decades, his forces have killed over 600 American soldiers in Iraq, and the US believes he is already planning his next move against American forces in the region. So the US killed him with a drone strike, and that single decision created a tension between Iran and the US. 5 days later, Iran struck back by firing over a dozen ballistic missiles at 2 US military bases in Iraq. And because of this, the US could strike back at any moment. Every news channel in the world is covering the same thing. US and Iran are on the edge of war, and no one knows what exactly will happen next, including Captain Volodymyr Gaponenko, a pilot who is scheduled to fly from Iran to Ukraine tomorrow. His wife looked at him and said, "Don't fly, don't do it." But he refused because he had to do his job professionally. The next morning, Captain Gaponenko prepared for Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 with 176 people on board, mostly Iranians and Canadians heading to Kiev. The flight is delayed by more than an hour because the aircraft is over its maximum takeoff weight, so he requested to offload some luggage before departure. He prepares the aircraft like he always did, but this time it's different. He knows Iran just fired missiles at American bases, and the US can strike back at any moment. He is nervous, but with 176 people depending on him, Captain Gaponenko pushes the throttle forward and begins his takeoff.
Взлетная тяга полная.
91,3 установлено.
Проверено.
The nose lifts off, climbing into the dark Tehran sky.
Good morning, European International 752. Radar identified and departure flight level 260. Traffic 6,000 feet, right.
Everything is normal, until just minutes later. Iran's Tor M1 detects a threat on their radar. It appears like an incoming US strike heading straight toward Iran's military base. He reports it to his command center, but no one responds, and he has only seconds to act before the US missile reaches Iran. So he acts by himself and shot a missile toward the target. But it's not a US missile. This happened because earlier that morning, the Tor M1 had been repositioned for a routine tactical adjustment. When they moved it, nobody recalibrated the equipment. The radar is now reading 105 degrees off, which caused the plane's movement to be misread and appear exactly like a missile striking toward an Iranian military base. Moreover, the operator didn't know that flight PS752 was running nearly an hour late, so when he checked the flight schedule, he was convinced that there were no incoming commercial flights at that hour. So, the operator has been tracking the wrong target this whole time. It's not an American missile, it's actually Flight 752.
Что это такое?
Осторожно, не трогай рычаги тяги.
GPS правый недействителен.
What Captain Gaponenko feared had just happened. The plane is now damaged and every electronic system isn't working. But the captain could still control the plane somehow. He tries to bank right and turn the plane back toward the airport, but the damage is already too severe. And without navigation, he could only rely on his instincts. But there is one thing he doesn't know. The Tor M1 radar is still tracking him. The operator still believes that the US missile is still heading toward Iran and hasn't gone down. So he fires a second one. No one survived. That's just the beginning of Iran's problems. For 72 hours, Iran denies that the aircraft had been struck by its own
علت
missile.
وقصانه هنوز برای ما نمیتونه مشخص بشه، ولی همچنین اشاره کردیم قطعا موشکی به اون برخورد نشده، ولی اینکه علت آتش سوزی و عاملش چی بود اینو باید دنبال بکنیم.
But the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, including the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, had already shared satellite data showing 2 launches from a Tor M1 near the airport.
We have intelligence from multiple sources, including our allies and our own intelligence. The evidence indicates that the plane was shot down by an Iranian surface-to-air missile.
Iran's government denies the missile accusations, saying it's psychological warfare by the West to pressure the Islamic Republic in a moment of vulnerability. But that claim didn't last long. A resident near the incident captured a video that quickly went viral on the internet, which clearly shows it was a missile strike. So the next day, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani admits it. He says that the missiles had been fired due to human error, but they never gave a credible explanation of how and why the aircraft was shot down. Iranians were furious, not just because their own military had shot down a plane full of civilians, but because the government had lied about it for 3 entire days and refused to be transparent about what really happened. Ironically, under international aviation law, only Iran has the right to lead the investigation, since the incident occurred within their territory. That is what disturbed the Canadian government, because many of the victims were from Canada. So Canada does what it can. They send 2 investigators to visit the crash site, examine it, and meet with the Iranian team. But they were not allowed to directly access the cockpit voice recorder or the flight data recordings. Because of this, Canada assembles a forensic examination team, pulling together every piece of information and evidence to find the truth. In March 2021, Iran's Aircraft Accident Investigation Board released its final report, blaming the incident to a miscalibration and an operator error. But Canada immediately rejected its credibility. So, in June 2021, Canada released its own forensic report, and their findings completely destroyed Iran's story. They found that Iran bulldozed the crash site before investigators even had the chance to examine it. Iran also claimed the risk to civilian aircraft was low, yet they had deployed missile systems on high alert right next to an active international airport without warning a single airline. Moreover, Iran's report about a single soldier's mistake doesn't align with Canada's findings. You see, before PS-752 took off, 4 other flights had already departed from the same airport that morning. This means that they all appeared on the same miscalibrated radar, and the command center had at least 4 chances to realize that something was wrong. And under Iran's military protocol, a single Tor M1 operator is not authorized to launch a missile without approval from his command center. So the order to fire may have come from his commander after all. But that's not all. According to Human Rights Watch, Iranian authorities actively intimidated the victims' families from speaking to foreign media. 16 people were warned against giving interviews, and some were even threatened with sexual violence. and sadly, one of the victims' family members was killed during a protest against the government. Some Canadian families who want to bring home the remains of their loved ones were forced to sign documents stating the victims aren't Canadian citizens. Iranian authorities also pressured families to accept the government's label of Shahid, which means the victims are no longer seen as victims, but as heroes who died for the state. Because of these, Canada and its allies brought the case to the International Court of Justice. But Iran rejected the ICJ's jurisdiction and refused to participate in the legal process. At the time this video was made, this case is still ongoing, and those questions still remain unanswered.